get off. By staying on, you agree that it's okay. I always hear that, but yeah, that's you too. If you get off, I'm in trouble. Let's see here. So let's go ahead and get started. Start with welcome everyone. This is the AIX Virtual User Group July webinar. I'm Joe Armstrong, and if you've been on these before, you're used to hearing me start. Just want to say welcome to everybody. Hope you're having a great summer. I got just one real announcement before we get going today. You've probably heard me talk before about the IBM Technical Universities. We call them Tech U's. We did one earlier this year in Orlando. There is another Power Systems and Storage Systems Tech U coming up. It's in October. It's October 16th through the 20th in New Orleans. And I do have a discount code for everybody that's on the AIX Virtual User Group. It's the same as the early bird pricing. Actually, early bird pricing ended last week. So it's better than the price you'll get now. So you get the early bird pricing through until you register up to the start of the conference. So great conference. I think this is the best education IBM gives as far as conferences and stuff. A week of just a lot of sessions, kind of sessions like we do here on the AIX VUG. But you can go and you can talk to the people personally there. All the great IBM minds are there as far as power minds anyway. So remember to come if you can, and to use the discount code if you haven't already registered. So with that, let's kind of get started here. The presentation for today is out on the wiki, so you can go and pull that down. I am recording. I'll put a link on the wiki probably within a day or two. After we're all done, I have to download it and get it all set up and everything. So today we're going to be talking about PowerHA and some other things that go along around with PowerHA. For example, the CBU, capacity backup, and then GDR, what is this? Globally dispersed resiliency?
It's a geographically dispersed resiliency.
Geographically, a lot of big words for my little mind.
It just rolls right off your tongue, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. So Steve's going to explain all that to us, guys. So today will be a really good learning experience to learn about PowerHA and these other things that are kind of wrapped around PowerHA a little bit. So our speaker today, Steve Finnis. Steve's is a worldwide product offering manager for HADR on Power Systems. Steve's been with IBM for a long time, 35 years. Started in the early 80s, involved with electron optics research and development, something that I didn't even know we were doing. He worked with processor development, memory development. He's the chief engineering manager for I/O and storage. Steve's team brought the first RAID 5 product offering to market in the early 90s. So it's something that we're all, well using these days. He's also the product manager for OptiConnect, which was a type of clustering that enabled scale out growth. Again, something that I wasn't familiar with. Today, well, since 2007, Steve started with what we call the HACMP. So if you've been around, you knew PowerHA before as HACMP. Rebranded to PowerHA now and PowerHA System Mirror. So Steve's had his hand in it for a number of years now, and he's going to kind of tell us what it's about, what's new, and explain how we can get the best use out of this in the data centers. So with that, Steve, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you.
Thank you, Joe. And by the way, if you look at this chart, I actually, you'll notice it is from the Tech U. So, we're getting a double advertisement on the Tech U. And that is definitely a great event. It really is. It's well attended, and I highly recommend it as well, Joe. So I tell you what, I'm going to cover 3 topics. You can see I'm going to talk about PowerHA, the CBU, which stands for capacity backup. And there's something on that you really, especially you folks that are either using the enterprise class servers, I mean the 880, 870 class, or business partners, you guys need to know about this because it's a phenomenal offering. And then a GDR, which we just introduced last October, and I think this is going to be very popular. So what I want to do here is start out a little bit. I just want to talk about what we did in the first half of this year relative to PowerHA, and in particular, what I'm really wanting people to see and use is this new user interface. It's really fantastic, and I'm going to give you a peek at what we're actually going to be doing in the second half of this year. So we'll touch on what's new in first half. I'll just update you folks, and then I'm going to do a little bit of a rewind review. We're just going to remember there's a lot of things we've been doing with PowerHA since we came out with the version 7, and we got to remind ourselves about all this great content that this product has brought to market. We keep adding value, and it's a phenomenal deal. When you look at the way that folks license, when you look at our enterprise pool capability, the CBU, not only is this product getting more and more and more and more rich with capability, but the value is going up, and it's going up, I would say, almost exponentially. So I wanted to just remind ourselves, let's take a look at a couple of these things that we're forgetting. Today I just got an email from somebody. They were asking about, hyperswap. Can I do hyperswap with Oracle RAC? Do I need PowerHA? And I said, yes, you do. You need PowerHA, but that hyperswap is fantastic, and people might tend to forget about some of these great things. So I'm just doing a little bit of a reminder. And then I'm going to talk about GDR, give an introduction, how it works, who's it for. And at the back, I've got a whole lot of resource materials. So what we did in first half with PowerHA, we introduced the dashboard capability to PowerHA 7.1.3 and 7.2.0. Point being is we wanted to expand the experience so that more of our clients can take advantage and start using the capability of that user interface now, today. And then we introduced Easy Update, and we added REST-based communications for the HMC so that we have, basically the point is that a greater number of our customers can take advantage of the ROHA, the resource optimized high availability. All right, so welcome to the new interface. What do you think about this? You see this login screen, and you're authenticated through PAM, you basically, you're going to come in, you're going to log in with your user password, and boom, you're going to have an interface. And you can see in this picture, this is actually a screenshot. This isn't a picture. This is a live screenshot of the user interface. And you can see with one immediate screen, you can see your clusters, you can see the status, you can see, for example, the yellow there's a warning on a demo cluster. So what it's saying is, instead of going and looking at status through SMITs and things like this, look, I can go on, with one look, I can see the health of all of my clusters. Whether I have a simple 2-node cluster, or if I'm one of my customers out there that have got 50, 100 clusters in their enterprise, here you go. You can see it all with one look. And when you think about it, when we did this project, and when I say we, I'm referring to IBM and customers. We did what's called a design thinking project, and this interface, this whole tool, was co-designed by actual customers that are co-sponsors, if you will. So we used the design thinking processes, and over a period of time established this tool. And so we had a very nice cross section of customers. I think we had, I believe it was 12 or so sponsor users, and they were really, really great to interact with us on a regular basis, give us feedback, and it was really interesting. I was able to sit in on a few of those calls, and it was fascinating to see how the design thinking process, the people that do that professionally. But my larger point is that this new capability is designed by you guys, jointly with us. And so I think that by definition, we have to have hit the mark. The whole point of this, in the first phase of this tool, notice I said first phase, is it's about, like I said, it's about monitoring, which makes sense. You know, when you're going to do a project of this magnitude, you're not going to be able to do everything that you want to do on day one. So you create what we call hills, objectives. And so the first thing we wanted to look at was monitoring, which makes sense. I mean, if I can take the whole monitoring thing and make that simplified, I've just released a huge amount of energy for other types of things in the IT shop. So this is easy to digest. You get a summary view of the entire environment. You can identify problem areas with a single glance. Click to drill down and troubleshoot. Feel calm and relaxed. That's the idea. You're able to see visually the resource relationships, visual display of the relationships among the resources. Clusters with the highest severity float to the top, and the visual status for each resources can be seen. You can go over and look on the left here. You can see cluster ABC online. It's got a red, so that one's floated up to the top. You can see the other cluster DEF needs some attention. You can see it breaks down hierarchically as you go down, you know, from site to node to resource group. The log viewer is really cool because what we've done now is you can go and grab you can see here the logs relevant to each of the clusters are brought up. You're able to click on there, expand the screen. We've filtered out a whole lot of the things you don't need, but if you want to expand and go into gory detail, you have that capability. It's all in here. And so one of the things you see about this log viewer is that was one of the things that our clients that worked with us, the people that worked with us on this project, our end customers, they said, you know, log analysis is horrific. You get hundreds and hundreds of logs and you have to sort through them, and it's just, God, can you guys do something about it? So we did. So first phase is really filtering, getting it down to the relevant logs so you can very quickly and easily go in and look. Not only that, but we also keep track of a timestamp because there might be some things that start sputtering, you know, early on, and you can sort of track it along and see what was happening. So there's a lot of things we did in this first release to make it easier for you to go in, immediately get access to the logs relevant to whatever type of activity is going on that needs attention. But we're not stopping here. This is phase one. So wait till this fall. You know, we're looking at now doing log analytics. So we're moving in the direction of doing more and more on your behalf, and this is just the first phase. I'm hoping, by the way, a lot of you folks are going to start using this. I'm interested in getting feedback from customers. You know, actually, you know, loading this and playing with it. A lot of times, the GUI can't do everything, right? So no problem. You can get access to your if you need to go in and dive into the command line. You got that window. You can do it. The GUI provides you that single point of access to all your clusters, and it's secured through SSH. Net of it is this, right? Solving a problem is easy. In just a few minutes, we're able to determine which resources have problems, identify the problem, solve the problem, and watch as PowerHA returns to health. And there's a little demo. I'm not going to play this video here. I'll let you folks do that. It's a neat 2-minute video if you wanted to use it to, you know, just take a quick peek at what we're up to. Easy to watch. It's out on YouTube. I'll just say you can go take a look at it. Also, you know, hang around because I watch for YouTube. I was just talking to our lead designer on this project. Some of you might know Gary Lowther, but we were talking. I said, you know, we did a discussion yesterday with a customer showing him the second stage of this project, phase 2, if you will, and I thought he did such a really, really profound job of doing an actual live demo. I said, gosh, let's in addition to this UI, let's go ahead and put in another YouTube where Gary can walk you through it. It was really great. So stay tuned. You'll see more things show up out on YouTube. A little bit of the technical details, so you can see how conceptually how this works, right? I've got these clusters over on the right side, and they're attached through a user interface server. You can use either Google Chrome or Mozilla Firefox. You can see the supported HA levels, 2.1, 7.2, 7.1.3. Remember, 7.1.3 goes end of service in April of next year. You can see the supported AIX levels. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about a couple of other things that we did. We added the REST communications capability to manage your interaction, your communicate to the HMC. And essentially what this does is it allows our customers that are using REST to be able to take advantage of the ROHA. And the ROHA, it stands for Resource Optimized High Availability, is really, that's pretty amazing technology when you consider that not only does the Resource Optimized High Availability enable you to gain huge economic value, but PowerHA actually manages it on behalf of our customers. So what this REST communication does, it gives another method, thereby expanding the number of our customers that can take advantage of that technology and the economic benefits. The other thing we did was added this easy update tool. And so there's a new command here. You will have either a local file system or a NIM server, and you're going to be able to push out the updates to the whole cluster. So it makes it really easy for you to go ahead and push out updates. Now what's really neat is that this fall, you'll be able to pull them back if you want to. So you can see the things we're doing here. Everything we're doing is all about simplifying, making the product easier to use. And I hope, we've been listening to you folks, and the message has been loud and clear. Simplify, please simplify. That's what we're doing. And this is another aspect of that simplification and increasing your productivity. I want to touch on a few things now that we did in the past. And if you guys recall, back in 2015 with PowerHA 7.2, we came out with this split merge capability, which was focused on linked clusters. Now the whole concept is that in a split cluster scenario between two locations, two sites, that's in two physical sites, two physical locations, a DR site and an HA site, let's say. Something happens, let's say that the communication link goes down or something like this. You now have what's called a split site, right? Who's going to be in charge? So the whole concept of split merge is, all right, so you need to have a policy in a way to establish who's going to be in charge. Is it site A or site B? Right, that's number one. And then number two, when you bring the two together into one cluster again, you need to decide again who's going to be the master, right? And that's in a nutshell, that's what it's all about. Well, so and the thing that I was most pleased with and most excited about is that the notification about a split is you can actually have that sent to the operator. There's different techniques, right? You can do, a disk, where it's who gets the disk first is going to be the master. There's different techniques for doing this. I'm not going into that here, but the point is that we now in 2016 with 7.2.1 we brought this to the to all clusters, both the stretched and the linked cluster. So if you wanted to, most people have auto failover in their data center. You could choose to say, I'm going to be notified, and I'll decide as an operator, I'll decide if I want to do a failover or not. Okay. So what we're doing is essentially bringing the whole split merge construct uniformly across linked clusters and stretched clusters. We also introduced quarantine policies, and this is very important because what we want to make sure, and the reason we did this, is that let's just take a simple 2-node cluster in the data center as an example. And something happens on the production node where it appears to fail. And I say appears, it goes away. And the node B, so let's say we have node A and node B. Node B takes over. He says, okay, I'm going to bring it up. He starts coming up, and as he's coming up into production, node A comes back. Oh, I'm just kidding. I really wasn't going away. Well, you don't want that. All of a sudden, you just create, the famous split brain condition or partition state. So what we did is we said we can never have that happen, and so we have this active node halt policy. It's called HMC node-based shoot down. That's where, you know, the guy that's coming, the guy that thinks he's going to be in charge, the node goes and says, I'm going to make sure that other node is not coming back. And the other option is also is disk fencing. So before I'm going to take over, I'm node B. Node A is gone. I'm going to make sure if he comes back, I've got the disk fenced off. So there's no chance that we're going to get a case where an accidental split brain occurs. That's what this is all about. A little reminder here, like I said, I was going to touch on a few things that, just as reminders, there's the standard edition and there's the enterprise edition. You know, the basic difference between the two is that enterprise edition is used when you're using any kind of storage replication, right? Standard edition is your traditional shared storage data center type of a cluster. I thought I would show a couple of these slides here. These are actually, we got these ones from Mike Herrera. I know everybody on this call knows Mike very well. The standard stretch cluster topology, the thing to note about it is that it's got a one repository disk, okay? And so the repository disk, you know, serves the purpose of topology management. It also, you know, this was part of our whole cluster aware architecture that we brought into being, you know, when we came out with 7.0. And as I know now, looking at our install base, it appears to me that virtually everybody has now gotten themselves up to at least 7.1.3. There's a few left, but most of our customers have made that transition, and things are actually going very well now. It was a little rocky in the beginning, and we're past that now, thankfully. And I think we're on to good things here. I think now we're at cruise altitude coming out with these enhancements. But we made this fundamental architectural change, and the real purpose of this was about simplification. At the end of the day, that's why we did these kinds of changes. So we came out with the notion of a stretch cluster and then the linked cluster. And so if you're going to do a data center and a disaster center cluster, you know, where you're stretched between, you're linked up between, say San Francisco and New York, hypothetically, you know, that's when you would use a linked cluster. And then, of course, a link cluster is going to have a repository on each of the sites. You know, you'll notice in this picture below, I've got site A and I've got site B, and each of them have a repository disk. Okay. The other thing we did is we introduced the capability for PowerHA to coexist with AIX Live Update. Now, this is incredibly important because if we didn't do that, and you're running a cluster, you have a node, a partition, let's say, and that's a member of the cluster, and all of a sudden a live update is occurring, and you know, under the covers a surrogate partition is created, the updates are done, and then that surrogate becomes the production, and the one that the original LPAR goes away. Well, of course, if PowerHA wasn't aware of that, it would go, oh, we just had a failure. Okay, so what it's saying, live update is a feature of AIX. What this chart is saying is that PowerHA knows about it. It knows it's happening. If someone's doing a live update, we know about it, we coexist, we're okay with it. And when that node, that original LPAR goes away, it's fine. We're now running on the surrogate LPAR, which is now the new node in the cluster. And you know, that similarly, and I didn't add the chart in here, think about the same thing with live partition mobility. Kind of similar, right? In the sense that if I use live partition mobility to move from system A to system B, I need to know the cluster, the PowerHA needs to know about that, right? Similar situation. After live partition mobility occurs, my original node in my cluster is gone, and it's now existing on another physical frame. And so again, we're completely synchronous with that. We know what's going on, and that's a smooth operation. Very important, both of those. And those are enhancements that we brought to market. Gosh, I think, well, this one, I guess, yeah, was introduced with, I see right there, 7.2 TL0. ROHA, resource optimized high availability, and this is, this is industry unique. I got to tell you, everybody out there that isn't at the latest level of PowerHA or aren't using PowerHA yet, they really ought to be taking a look at this. At least think about the financial benefits. And so symbolically, this is an animation where the active LPAR goes away, fails in this particular case. PowerHA interacts with the HMC, brings in the resources needed to run that application over on that other system, and voila. Now, more importantly, in my view, is not this kind of active operation, where we have an actual failure. My opinion is it's more interesting is about planned failover operations or a planned role swap operation. Because what I want to be able to do, in my data center, I want to be switching back and forth between sites, because remember now you can use multiple HMCs. So that requirement where you used to have one HMC in one of these clusters, whether it's local or distributed, nowadays you can have multiple HMCs that communicate with each other to allow this movement of resources. But I want to move from System A to System B, because I did some updates on System B. I added PTFs, whatever I did. Then I'm going to move over there and I'm going to do the same on System A. All right, PowerHA takes care of that, right? It does everything for you. And so what it does is when you're going to issue the command to roll over to System B, it goes ahead, it opens up the resources required using mobile activations, right? Mobile memory, mobile processors, brings those into production, move the workload over, and then reduce the source. So what it did is, number one, it automated all of that, but number two, it keeps you inherently, by definition, in compliance. And I know a lot of you folks, I get calls a lot, can I do this? How can I license, and so on and so forth. Well, think about this, it's completely automated. Not only did it remove operations, administrative overhead, but it also keeps our customers in compliance at all times. And then the other thing I want, and by the way, hang on to this thought, because there's something way better than this by itself, and that's called the CBU. So just plant that thought in your mind. I'm going to come on to that here in a couple of slides. The other one I wanted to talk about was the shared processor pool resize capability. And again, if I did a little animation there where, what I want to do is I want to move my resources. In this case, this is scale out, right? The resource optimized high availability is about scale up. Those are the 880, 870 class servers. But what if I'm running on let's say an 824 class server, 822, 812, one of the scale out servers, and I want to save on resources. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and on my target box on the right hand side there, I'm going to have only one license. I'm going to set myself up with one license, and then the thing switched on me really fast. So I'm licensed on the left side, and on the right side I have one license, and that one license is on a core in a shared processor pool of one. All right, everything's good. Now when I want to do a rollover or failover to the target box, PowerHA will go ahead and interact with the HMC, go ahead and expand that target, see there, and then we're going to roll over and we're going to close down the source. What I did is I maintained complete compliance at all times, right? The number of licenses that I'm using at any given time remain constant, whether I'm running on System A or System B. And of course, you guys have seen Mike's presentation where he dives into deeper detail, on how the different ways you can set up these environments. But I just did a real simple case here, and I showed the total savings versus, and I just looked only at AIX and PowerHA, as the two things I focused on, versus licensing both the primary and the secondary. I saved quite a lot of money in this example, this particular example, about $243,000 US dollars. This is not in your chart deck, and so I'm not going to stay on this, but I just wanted to show you a roadmap of what's coming as we're looking now. I just put out in April, right? I mentioned this. We did we expanded the user interface to more versions of PowerHA, and we also introduced the easy update, the ROHA, the REST APIs. So you can see the theme at the bottom: modernization stage 1, expand the install base coverage. In other words, give more people access to this technology. And the stage 3 is modernization stage 2, where we're now bringing out the cluster management with the log analytics, and the ability to actually manage the cluster. And notice down there, a little hint at the bottom, PowerHA for SAP. We're actually working, diligently on studying it, and so stay tuned on that. That's just a peek at what might be happening. This chart is not also in your deck because it's notice I said plan subject to change, but I just wanted to give you a peek at what we're doing right now. And I'm going to say this too, is that if any of you have a customer or you're a customer and you would like to actually interact with our team, we'd love to do it. We're looking for feedback, and we've done a few calls already with customers to actually take them through and show them here's what it looks like right now, a real short intro, and then we actually do a live actual cluster management. So what when I call the 1 and 4th quarters, I call it cloud-enabled PowerHA. And why I say that is because we're going to have the capability, you'll be able to create what we call HA zones. And so you think about a cluster that's in a cloud, and we've got a lot of customers out there who are what we call MSPs, right? Managed service providers, who really are providing a cloud type of a service. Well, in those environments, very typically, you'll have servers with multiple customers, multi-tenant environments. So now I'm going to have this set up so that I can go ahead and I can zone, and I can set up user permissions, set up roles, who's got read access, who's got update authority, right? And I can set my zones up as in whatever sense I want to use. Logical groupings, like I can use geographical separation, line of business, right? And point is we're becoming much more, I would say, robust, and this multi-tenant capability I think is essential as we move forward, and more customers are deploying cloud-based operations. And by the way, that cloud could be your own data center cloud. It could be maybe some of you, I know a lot of our customers will use some of the healthcare apps out there, hospital management and so forth, via service provider. So you can see how important this is, and it'll become increasingly important as time moves on. The other thing is the actual cluster management. And so just some of the highlights: cluster administrative actions. You can stop, start cluster, stop, start workloads, move workloads between sites and nodes, do cluster verification. There'll be a full-featured cluster creation wizard, allow users to create all 3 styles: standard, stretched, linked. Clearly, it's going to reduce human errors. It's going to make it a lot easier to deploy. That's one of the things you get feedback a lot on too, is once I have the PowerHA cluster set up, it's fantastic. Getting it set up is difficult. You get that feedback. Well, you see, this is what we're doing. We're focusing in on these areas. And then you'll be able to do workload creation with a management wizard. The initial release will provide the most commonly required components: policies, service IP, volume groups, file systems, application controllers. Okay, and more complex workload components will be coming in a future release. We're not stopping. We keep moving forward. So here I have this. It says 2-minute video PowerHA user interface cluster manager. And so what I'm going to do is say, this is more of a reminder to me, to remind everybody on the call, that two things. If you're a business partner and if you're a customer and you'd actually like to see what we're doing, I mean, if I get inundated with thousands of requests, we're not going to do it. But I mean, like maybe the next, say 5 or 6, maybe up to 10, we would like to show you what we've, this little video. I can't actually put it out there right now because it's, obviously it's a pre-announced kind of stuff. But I would like to be able to go ahead and some of you folks would like to interact with us for like a 1-hour call where we would walk you through and show you the kinds of management capabilities that we're going to be doing in the fall. The call we did, one of the calls we did was yesterday, I think, was, or the day before. And it's kind of neat because you're actually working on a live cluster, right? And so, hey, we're still a ways away from general availability. So, it's, but it's working, and every now and again they'll run into something. But this thing is, it works. It's really cool, and I'm welcoming you if you'd like to see that and see what we're doing. By all means. contact me and we'll see what we can set up. I want to remind everybody about the release life cycle. This is important, and in particular, I want to remind everybody, if you look up there at PowerHA version 7.1.3, you can see that we're going to do that end of service on April of next year. So you need to be moving up. You need to move up, and you know, let's just remember this: going from version 7.1.3 to 7.2 to 7.2.1 up is more like applying service packs, or you know, it's like a PTF level. This is not a big change, you know, and I think that's important to note, because it's different now. You know, like when we went from version 6 up through version 7, that was a big change. That was a really big change, very disruptive, right? We're past that now. Now we're into this 7X family, and we will be for a very long time. So when you think about the process of moving from version 7.1.3 on up, think more along the lines of I'm applying some PTFs, okay? So I just want to emphasize it's not a big deal moving up anymore like it would have been when we went from 6 dot up to 7 dot. Now I want to talk about the 880 and 870 CBU servers, and this is very important for you folks that are you know, in the enterprise class servers, and for you business partners that have customers that are in the enterprise class servers. And I want to make sure you all know this, because you know, when I talk to customers, which is fairly regularly, and I show them this, and they go, hey, how come I haven't heard about this yet? Well, okay, you're hearing about it right now, and you want to definitely, if you're in that class of server and you're looking at enterprise pools, clearly you're going to want to do this, all right? And so let me just say in a nutshell what this is. It's a way for us to provide a huge economic value capitalizing on enterprise pools. And one of the features about it, and I'm going to go into a little more detail, one of the key features is that there's active memory on the target box, okay? So the CBU offering is about giving you discounted hardware, but it's also about having active standby memory on that target box. And the reason for that is that when you do a failover and you're acquiring resources, you're acquiring memory, memory takes time, all right? It can take 3 or 4 minutes per 256 gigabyte, for example. So, you know, before you could actually conduct the failover, if you are not taking advantage of this technology, you got to acquire that memory activation first. So you might be sitting there for 30 minutes acquiring the memory. All right, so that's kind of a, you know, an inkling about what we're doing here. Now let's go into a little more detail. So what it is I have this 880 or 870 in production, and I'm going to go and put in my secondary system as an HA server. All right, so I could go ahead and just use enterprise pools, right? I can go and say, well, I'm going to go and I'll use my mobile cores, and I'll use mobile memory activations to move from my primary to my CBU. What this does is it says, first of all, if you have an 870, whether it's an 870C or an 870 as a production, then you're eligible to get the 870 C or regular or non-C as a CBU. And you'll be able to get, so if, and let me just give you a simple case. Let's say I have 2 nodes of processors on my production, my primary. That makes you eligible for 2 discounted on the CBU, deeply discounted. Number 2, I want to have all my cores that I'm going to move as part of an HA operation set up as mobile cores. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my mobile cores from the primary to the CBU for an HA operation. But I'm also going to have standby active memory on that CBU box proportional to the number of mobile cores, okay? So if I've got, I don't know, let's say, sake of argument, 10 mobile cores, then I will get 10 times 32 gigabyte per core. So I had 10 cores, 32 gigabyte per core, right? That now gives me gigabytes times 365 days in a year. Credited, no charge memory activations on that box. So I'm going to get memory activations on the target box proportional to the number of mobile cores on my primary server. So everything about the offering is pegged off of, or keyed off of, if you will, the primary server. All right, now I'm essentially using the benefits of enterprise pools for my processor movement, but I've got active standby on my target, active standby memory, which gives me that capability to, I don't need to acquire the memory. Another thing about this offering is that you can only have 8 static cores on that target box. All other cores that arrive on that box arrive by 2 means, either mobile activations, or you can use elastic capacity on demand on that box, but there are no other permanent activations on that box. All right, and it is to be used for disaster recovery. Now let me say a few things about that. Number one is that you do have 8 static cores always on the primary and on the secondary box. There's always 8 static cores. Those are your cores. You can do them as you see fit, right? You can use those cores for whatever. The other thing is that let's say a lot of my customers will say, well, you know, I want to be able to run some of my workload over on the CBU. I want to split it, right? I'm going to put my HR. I want to run that over on the CBU, and I'm going to keep my banking apps over on the primary. Can I do that? And the answer is yes, you can do that. Absolutely. The only rule here is that when I set the configuration up, I'm moving all of my entitlements, or some of my entitlements is a better way to say it. I'm going to move some of those entitlements. I'm going to take the partition with, using my example of HR. I'm going to take that, and after I've set this up, I'm going to go ahead and move it over and run it over on the CBU. You can do that. That's fine. That's absolutely, you can do that. The only point is that the entitlements originate on the primary, and they essentially belong to the primary. Okay. You're not actually physically going in and moving licenses around, that kind of thing, but you think of the word as entitled. You're entitled to go ahead and use those over on the CBU box. So you're evacuating the partition on the primary and you're firing it up on the CBU. So it's very flexible, right? And the other thing is, you know, the standard is you need to have 50% of the DIMM memory active on the production on the CBU. You only need 25%. So that's the offering in a nutshell, and you can see it's a good deal. And when I explain this to customers that are our enterprise class customers, they go, why would you not do this? And my answer is, I'm not sure why you wouldn't do it. You should be doing this. You know, and I would assume that virtually every customer that has an enterprise class environment also has high availability. And you clearly want to take advantage of this. And then the neat thing about PowerHA managing all this processor activation on your behalf, nobody comes close to us. Let's face it. You know, they can't touch us. You know, hopefully some other people looking on this call and they're going, gosh, look what these guys are doing over there. I wonder if we should be moving over to PowerHA now. No, you probably should actually. All right. So you get that, I think. This is just the table. You know, we put together a table, you know, just to remind you know. So you know what you're going to do is, you know, you look up here, you see these 870s. So I can pick an 870, let's say 4.1 gigahertz, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say, well, I'm going to go and make the 870C is my CBU, and so I'm going to go over, look at the far right. I'm going to pick the feature code Easy Baker 3 King. What that does is in the econfig, in the ordering system, it says, all right, that's a CBU. I know that's a CBU now. And then we go from there. And when you go over, and I encourage you to go ahead and take a look at, I have a CBU website out there. When you go to the CBU website, you'll see there's 2 tabs. There's 2 parts to it. One is CBU for I, the other one is CBU for enterprise servers. So you want to go to the tab for enterprise servers. And then you go and you fill in all the registration detail about the company and all of this. And then there's a little drop-down field below. You fill that in, it automatically goes ahead and calculates, you know, the number of no-charge memory days, which again is proportional to the mobile cores on your production system. I just did a simple example here. I said I have an 870 production with 2 nodes. So I get 2 discounted nodes over on them. on the CBU box. Notice the specified code is Easy Baker 3 King. I have 8 static cores, 40 mobile, so I've got 8 static cores over on the CBU, 50% DIMM memory, 25% DIMM memory, and there in the fourth bullet, 365 days times 40 mobile cores times 32 gigabyte per core is 467, 200 gigabytes of no charge elastic capacity on demand memory days for that CBU box, and that is renewable annually. So it's a great deal. And I'll tell you something else. Business partners, customers listening here. I know a lot of times I hear people are saying, "Well, we're kind of evaluating. I wonder if we should do the 850 or should we do the 870?" Well, take a close look at this, because this could be the deciding point that says, you know what, let's go with the 870. There's a huge financial benefit, and plus you're up on the scale up the big enterprise systems. So I encourage you to take a look if you're kind of in that gray area, and even if you're not in the gray area, you should be looking at this. It's a fantastic offering. This is just a chart on the registration process, and there is a part in there when you go in there. There's a little spreadsheet. My colleague Bill Casey, I'm sure most of you probably know Bill too. He put a little spreadsheet, and the intention of that spreadsheet is to have you just do that first, so you don't, because what we want to do is make sure you don't order the wrong stuff. That's all. And so that it's meant to be a little exercise. I have all my ducks in a row here, and then go ahead down to the second tab, and then you can start the registration process. All right, let's talk about GDR. Geographically dispersed resiliency. Yeah, it's a VM restart technology. The best way, if I were to describe it in one simple sentence, I would just say, if you know what VMware SRM is, so this is the same basic thing for power systems, and it's about disaster recovery, economics, and simplification. This thing is super easy to work, to use, and it's very inexpensive. When you see that picture there on the right side, you can see over on the restarted VM there's nothing on that box except BIOS. Okay, so you don't actually have to put licenses over there. Although I'm going to tell you, I would, if for no other reason, I've got the ability to get my second level support, and it supports, as you can see on the bottom, AIX, Red Hat, SUSE, Ubuntu, and IBM i. All right, let's take a look at what the whole, if you will, the whole view or the strategy of this technology is. And at the picture at the top, I drew this sort of simple animation, and I'm going, okay, so I've got this production site on the left side, and over on the right side, I've got, you see those two servers, those two storage devices are communicating, they're replicating data, so I've got live real-time data being replicated. And then what I want to do is I'm going to do my good old annual DR testing, which a lot of you guys do that twice a year, right? And it can be a huge pain, unless you have a PowerHA cluster, you have a PowerHA Enterprise Edition cluster, or maybe you've only got a PowerHA data center cluster, right? And then you are probably maybe doing manual operations today. Maybe you're replicating the data, and then you all go ahead and you do some sort of a manual process to boot up the target site and do all of this. Well, how about instead do this, right? Let's just go in and issue a single command over to this thing we call the cases, which is a control system. It's a partition that's got AIX on it that manages all of this process. It orderly brings down the source system, gets the stuff out of memory and everything, gets everything down totally into that virtual machine, which is being replicated in real time, and then it boots it up on the target side. Now, the whole point of this thing is from the very start of this, I always said, this is not just about having a disaster recovery solution, because as far as I know, everybody on the planet has a disaster recovery solution, even if it's recover from tape, which I hope not too many people are doing that these days as their only means of disaster recovery. But the point is, everybody's got disaster recovery. What a lot of people don't have is the capability to do their disaster recovery testing easily. And that's really what this is about. Easily and economically. very inexpensively. And I'm going to show you that in a minute here when we look at the pricing aspects. And, you know, a lot of customers of ours, like I said earlier, are MSPs. This is ideal, you know, for being able to host customers for disaster recovery solutions. The value proposition is it replaces ultimately the expensive software replication and manual DR processes. You know, I mean, right now, I know a lot of you folks are sitting there doing some kind of a manual operation. You might be doing data replication at the storage level. You might be using one of the packages from one of the ISVs that do host-based replication, where you're replicating event logs and so forth from system A to system B. Complicated stuff and expensive. And by the way, it consumes overhead. So you look at this and you go, wait a minute, looks really, really easy. I have real-time data replication, which means if I were a synchronous distance apart, that would be RPO of 0. Right? I've got 2 crash-consistent copies between these 2 sites. Right? It is easy to use. It's relatively easy to set up. All right. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is to be able to do what we call disaster recovery rehearsal, and I'll talk about that in a couple of slides. And see there for more information, GDR at us.ibm.com. And when you click on that, you get immediately are communicated to my extended team. This is done in partnership with my colleagues in GTS, and so we all get that notification when you log into there and talk to us. Now, oh, by the way, notice when I switch over, we reverse. Now my production is over on the DR site, and so we reverse the replication, of course. You know, that way I'm always keeping 2 synchronized copy of the data. And you know, like I said, you know, disaster. If you're a synchronous distance, and that's typically a couple hundred kilometers, let's say, you know, then you can use a synchronous mode of replication, which gives you essentially an RPO of 0. If you're beyond that, then you use an asynchronous technology like, say, Global Mirror, in which case your RPO is going to be some number of seconds. That's just an inherent trade-off. When you're going to go with distance, you must have the capability to not have the application waiting on the replication process. So how does it work? Well, we've got these VMs set up in this picture on the left side. Take a look over at the right side. I've got this identical box. I've got these little VM1 and VM2 with dotted lines around them. You might think you're sitting there going, wait a minute, do they have to be set up? No, no, no. We actually set those up. They're not actually there. That's the pictures there just to sort of set the premise up of what's going on here. So, and then and you look up on the right side at the top in Site 2, you see this box that says cases. Now, that's the mastermind behind this whole process. That's where the code resides that executes these processes of bringing down Site 1 and bringing up Site 2. And you look at the bottom of the picture and you see the storage devices, and we're sitting there, we're replicating that data in real time at the storage level. So I have my virtual machines continuously replicating, and there we go. I'm all set up. On my left side, I could be a PowerHA cluster. I could be a standalone box. There's all kinds of different scenarios. I'm particularly interested in you know, because obviously I own PowerHA. I want to make sure that my customers that are running PowerHA in the data center, they should be taking a look at this, because it's going to make life so much easier for their disaster recovery operations, and you'll be excited when you see some of the neat stuff we're working on for fourth quarter. Okay, now, oh yeah, this is just an animation, just shows you, you know, again, symbolically what's going on here, right? Of course, we reverse the replication. This is neat. SAP HANA, right? You know, so SAP HANA is super high availability in the sense of they have this, you know, the HANA replication. So over on the home site, you know, the HANA itself it's replicating the data between primary and secondary nodes, so it's keeping it very high available. And then you have an adjunct application, and they're like say the SUSE or SLES for SAP, and that function is working with replication, and so it's keeping the environment over in the home site completely robustly available you know. And because it's an active setup. I've got these 2 active copies at all times. I've got this cluster manager associated with it, so everything is fantastic. But like everybody else, I need to do my annual DR testing as well. And so here you go. You look at the GDR, and I just showed you that animation where we're going to go ahead and spin up our SAP over at our DR site, and voila, we did our DR test, and we did it very nicely and easily. And so I would suggest that when we go out there and we're talking to our SAP clients, you know, that are in the process of moving over to HANA, show them this capability. Let's take a look at the licensing for this product. So the table over there on the right side, you can see I've got a small processor group, price per core, and a medium. So $1,020 and $1,575. All right. Now, if you take a look over on the left side of the picture, you know, I just did a hypothetical setup, right? I said, well, I've got these 2 servers. The upper one, I've got 2 Linux and 3 AX cores, so 2 separate partitions, these cores. On the bottom one, I have a partition with AX, one with I, and one with Linux. And I'm replicating these virtual machines continuously from the left to the right side. I don't show the storage in this picture, obviously. And then up on the right-hand corner, I have this cases partition. That's actually where my licenses reside. So the way we do this is we count up. We're going to go. We've got the number of cores here. We're 14 that we're going to be managing in the DR. So you go down, you take a look. In the green box, we'll have 4 systems, 2 production, 2 DR systems. The production site has 5 VM, 14 production, 5 Linux, 7 AIX, 2 I, and 14 Power VM LPPs. At the DR site, right? Simple math here. And then at the DR site, I also have 1 cases system or partition, whatever you want to call it. I should call it a partition. It doesn't have to be in a system per se. And that's going to have an AIX license. And then we're going to count up the numbers, and we're going to have, in this case, it was $14,280 list, and that's how much I'm going to have as my price to be able to get those cores licensed. Now, what you see here is not available in the sense of being able to order it out of AAS until August the 11th. I put that in here now, though you guys need to know about this. Not so much the customers on this call, but the business partners, you guys need to know this, because up until August the 11th, the only way you could actually get this was with an iListed PRPQ. So very shortly, you'll be able to go ahead and just, what is that, a couple weeks from now, you'll be able to go ahead and order these directly out of AAS. So it'll be an e-config. Everything will be standard, normal operating procedures. And I recommend services for your first implementation. And so when I say you, I mean if you're a business partner, you know, if you're an MSP, I'd recommend go ahead, work with our, do a services engagement, to learn all about it. We got a nice red book out there, by the way, that's very detailed. So there's plenty of resources, and there you go. It's pretty straightforward, actually, isn't it? This is a roadmap. So if you see this, we released this last November in 2016. And then here in May of 2017, we brought out support for I, and then we extended support to the Storewise, DSA-K, and EMC Sync mode. And when we first came out with this, we only supported EMC SRDF. And the reason for that is our first sponsor customer, the first beta customer, if you will, was an EMC, and so we just focused in. Right, because when you come out with a first product, just like when you do, when I was talking about with our user interface, you're not gonna boil the ocean on day one, right? You're gonna do things in stages. So what stage one was to get this function out there, get it on a storage device, and then very quickly we came around in May of this year. In fact, it was May 9th, I believe. We added support for the rest of the IBM storage. And then this fall, you go out, take a look out there. I don't have the dates on these things, but we're going to add advanced DR policies. Right now, it's the whole site switches over, right? And so when we're going to have host groups, it says that I can switch over hosts individually, and I don't have to switch over the entire site as a group. The thing I'm most excited about, and the thing that I think most of my customers are excited about, are the failover rehearsal. This is one that I was really pushy on when we started putting our roadmaps together. I gotta have the capability to be able to go ahead and fire up a partition over on that DR site, run my test bucket, and discard it. In other words, not everybody is going to do a failover operation for their DR testing. Some industries do. I've got banks that that's a requirement. They absolutely must show that they can switch over and run on that DR site. All right, so, but there's an awful lot of customers that don't need to do that, and they're going to be extremely happy to be able to just go fire up a test partition, run their DR, and toss it away. And of course, once you have a test partition like that, which is essentially, if I use IBM storage lingo, it's essentially a flash copy, right, of the production data. Guess what? You now have the capability to go ahead and move that off to wherever you put your, I hate to use the word tape, but okay, let's say you save off to a tape library, let's say you save off to a cloud, whatever you do, you have that data sitting over there. So this becomes really interesting technology and really, I think, impressive what we're going to be able to do with our customers with this. And this is the rehearsal concept. This is, I think, this is fantastic. It really is. You know, symbolically, right? We're going to spin up, you know, copy at the target site, right? And then we're going to bring it up into its own private network so that you can go ahead and you've got that data sitting over there. You can run your test bucket against it. Tell me that's not cool, right? Very good stuff. Very good stuff. I love it. And like I said, now that I've got that copy of that data, I can also perform my DR backup, my third tier of backup, if you will. So I might have a PowerHA cluster in the data center, and I've got my DR site with this, and then my third tier out is where I'm going to put my archive data or my backup data, which is in like I said, some kind of a storage vault or some kind of a cloud-based solution. Who should be interested in this? Everybody, but basically AXI, Linux, Power System customers. PowerHA Standard Edition customers who are today using manual methods, right, or roll your own. But particularly, I want you guys, you know, business partners and customers, if you're using some sort of a host-based data replication for your DR, you know, and there's a number of different scenarios out there, you know, what I'm talking about. And those tend to be a little bit complicated to run, number one. Number two, you know, somebody's got to be involved in the operation of these things to make sure the data is synchronized, to validate you can actually do a failover operation. They use processing overhead, right? And by the way, it's active-active, which means you're licensing on that target box. So you're paying out a fair amount of money to use those kinds of products just to keep the annual SWAMA prices. After you've bought the thing, now you're paying the SWAMA. You're paying the replication overhead, right? And you're involving people. So where's the downside of going over to this GDR solution? I can't see one. The only reason I can imagine that somebody needs to have an active DR is if for some reason you absolutely have to go and read data, access data off the target site. You have to pull data for reports or whatever, all right? But then to me, that's not really a true DR. That's kind of a hybrid. I'm trying to do DR and run reports at the same time. But with the amount of power we have these days with our power servers, there's excessive capacity out there, compute capacity, and with the modern query tools and all of this, I would say the need to be able to be running real-time reports off targets has come down quite a bit from the days of old. It also will work fine with Power VC, right? Linux on Power customers, right? This is neat. You know, this is, you know, you think about this stuff, and there's, by the way, stay tuned. There's more to come in this space. As you saw, what I was working on in fourth quarter. We're not standing still in this area either. And last but not least on my list is MSPs that are ordering or offering disaster recovery as a service. And I don't know, some of you guys might be on the call right now. You know, I'm working with couple of 2 or 3 different MSPs that are setting up these environments as a means of hosting clients for disaster recovery. I have a little positioning table I put together here to kind of summarize, and you know, they like a lot of the marketing type people tell me, you show me a pain point, desired outcomes, all this. So I put this table together. And when you go over to the pain point, I'm not sitting there and saying, this is the pain point. There's probably 20 pain points on each one of those rows. I just picked the one, right? If I were to pick the distinguishing pain point, the first one I'm going to say is, I can't have downtime for software maintenance. Then you are definitely going to be using PowerHA, right? PowerHA is for mission critical operations. You are able to do software updates and upgrades and PTF applies, things like this on one of the nodes in the cluster that's not currently in the production node, all right? So if I'm mission critical, and I just picked that particular one because that's it, right? That's what says if I am a 24/7 shop, better yet 24/365, I need PowerHA, period. It covers all outages, right? And with all the things we're doing with the user interface, the complication factors are going down, down, down. It's really becoming, from a complexity perspective, I think that the PowerHA is really coming into a place of its own now. And we're going after that big time, as you can see. Now, if I want a DR solution, and I really am, this compliance testing is becoming kind of a pain, actually. We have to do it twice a year. It's a big hassle to get things set up. I got to have people coming in on Friday and getting ready for this thing. We spend all day Saturday, Sunday, we do the DR test, and then we get back, we have to be back, everything's set back up by Sunday night at midnight so we can get back into production, all those kinds of things going on. Well, you should be using GDR then, right? And particularly looking toward fourth quarter when you have the DR rehearsal capability, imagine that, right? So whether you're one of these clients that actually has to do a complete failover and restart at the remote site, or you don't have to, well, we got it, right? We have it. So be watching the space. This GDR is going to be big for all our power customers. And then the third category, well, what I want is I want just simple change management. I want to be able to admin. I don't need a cluster. I'm not into the partitions I want to deal with here are not mission critical. Well, PowerVC will do that job for you. Anyway, that's my cut at just doing a simple, how you kind of can categorize these strategically and how you rationalize which one goes where. Then I just had a couple of things to touch on regarding, remember, these are sort of remember the neat stuff we did. This is a summary going back to 2015, the row hub, we talked about that, non-disruptive upgrade, automatic repository disk replacement, AIX live update and LPM support. I talked about that earlier. We do the detailed cluster verification checks, the quarantine policies we talked about. And then the NFS tiebreaker disk support. Robbie really likes that one. I'm more excited about the the operator notification part of it. So whatever you like, we support them. And then don't forget about these links. We got all these fantastic resources out here, and you can see there. I've got that video out on YouTube. You can take a peek at that. But better than looking at that 2-minute video, you should really be firing up the UI. It's out there. You guys can do it now. Like I said, now we support 7.1.3 and 7.2. So you can go look at the video, but even better yet, you can actually do it. And there's some more useful links here. Migration guide. There's a Q&A out there. Something for fixed bundles. The capacity backup that I talked about, and fixed level tool links. And by the way, there's something else dug on it in here somewhere. I should have. I'm going to encourage you guys. We have a LinkedIn site out there, PowerHA LinkedIn. Join that. I thought I had that in here. I guess I don't. So I'm just remembering to tell you now. Go ahead and join up. There it is. It's there underneath the HA form. So you got LinkedIn, the developer works, and the wiki and all of this. But join up with the LinkedIn group. My view is that this is a way to start to build a community where you can. A lot of times, customers answer each other's questions, and that could be a neat place to do it. I see where our customers that have their private forums, like the TCC or people like this, will sit and communicate with each other. So I think that the whole LinkedIn thing can be used strategically in that fashion. So take a look at it. And hey, here's an advertisement for our IBM training, right? So that's from the good old TechU. And hopefully we'll see you in New Orleans this fall. And with that, Joe, I'll turn it back to you.
Well, we have a lot of questions, Steve, so let's kind of go through those a little bit.
Oh no, I don't want questions. I was hoping I would run the clock out here.
Yeah,
Kidding,
no.
kidding.
Actually, this is the fun part, right? So this is where you get to, go off your script and talk about it.
Well, I don't follow much of a script, in case you didn't notice.
Right. So, you can probably might be good for you to undock the questions pane and take a look at those yourself.
Okay. All right. If I do that, then you don't see the screen anymore, right?
No. You everything that you're showing on your screen still shows up there. So I
okay.
don't think
Okay.
it'll cover some of your screen, but nobody else sees it, I don't think.
All right. So
now I got your cursor moving around like a ghost as you click around it. So, but some of the stuff you talked about, and I'm kind of trying to figure out exactly how to start here, but
I'm looking for. By the way, I'm trying to find the control panel thing. I can't find it. I don't see it here.
Your control panel?
Yeah.
No, if you minimized it, it's probably a small little thing on the right side of your screen with a little red arrow on it.
Gosh, I don't see it. Let me bring this down, see if I get everything off my screen.
It would be on the top of everything because it never goes underneath the window. But it looks like you're on a Macintosh, right?
Absolutely. I love this Mac. I was a Windows guy for years, and it's switched over last year. God, I tell you, I absolutely love this thing.
So all the stuff you talked about, Steve, was a lot of stuff for Power, and you mentioned AIX and Linux on it. So it's like GDR and PowerHA, all that stuff works just as well with IBM I as it does with AIX, for example, right?
Well, let me say this about it. That's a good question, Joe, by the way. That's a very good question. So on IBM I, they actually have, the lab services guys have a what's called a full system replication option, which is essentially the same thing, except that with GDR, it is based on BIOS. You must be doing virtual machines. The toolkit they have out of lab services doesn't require that, one. And two, they've done some, they've written some programs to basically condition the target side to bring it up quickly. And so when we actually get down to doing some of these projects with some of our business partners, for example, that host I just had a call last week with one of our lab services people. It was Laurel Schleckoff, and we were, there's actually a customer and they want to do this, and so Laurel's interested from a lab service perspective, in getting involved in these. So there might be a few things we want to set up when we're doing an I environment, but I'm not too worried about it, actually. The other thing I should point out is this in the I environment is that the PowerHA cluster, I'm going to say we won't support that yet. It has to do with the way that the clustering owns the disk subsystem in AIX versus in the I world. In the I world, we are actually connected to the disks at all times, and we pass control between the nodes in the cluster to own the disk. And so although I can replicate the virtual machines to get to a like cluster at another site, there's a few things we need to work out about who's actually in charge, which node is the owner node and that kind of thing. So initially, at least, I'm going to say, and besides, the other thing is too, with the PowerHA and I customers, they already do multi-site clustering. So it may not be as interesting for them. It might be more interesting to the folks that just want a DR site with I, but other than that, it should be fine. The one thing about it, of course, is that the command interface is AIX. So I mean, if it's a client that is purely an I, they might not be too, that might be a problem for them. But for my MSP partners, that shouldn't be a problem because that's what they do for a living. Down the road, we're going to actually provide the capability to run cases on a Linux partition as well. That will probably help out a lot from a usability perspective for a lot of different kinds of clients.
Okay. Let's see. You mentioned the GUI available there. The GUI binaries included in the HA software?
They are indeed. That's part of the package.
Okay. Let's see. So the CBU is only for 870s and 880s, right?
That's correct. Yep.
But the GDR is for any servers, and you mentioned licensing, so I kind of
That's right. The GDR is for any server. Yep.
Right. There's a small and a medium. So 870s and 880s are medium tier machines, and everything else is a small tier machine.
Yep. And by the way, on that point too, is if you did have, I don't put it on the charts because I don't feel the need to, but if you have I'll call it a legacy power box, it's like say a 795. I just set the pricing up so it's the same. It's a medium, right? So we didn't have to hassle with having 3 tiers when ultimately, that top tier eventually is going to be totally gone. So I just listed the 2 prices, medium and small, and medium applies to everything, even if you're at 795.
Oh, okay. Okay. Can you upgrade directly from HA 6.1 to 7.2, or do you have to go through the 7.1 somehow?
I think you can go. I'm not aware that you have to do a staged upgrade. I would want to, before I answer that one though, I'd like Mike to answer that one, but I'm pretty sure you can go straight to 7.2.
Yeah.
There's not many people left that haven't done the conversion, so I'm hoping whoever's asking that question is going to hurry up and get going, get help. I would recommend too, if you're still hanging out there and you haven't done it yet, I would recommend working with I'd probably work with one of my lab services team to do it, to get you right up. 7.2 is where you want to be. It's you see all the technology we're doing. And we focused in because it was kind of a rocky road, as a lot of you folks remember. And we went first to 7.0. There were some issues in CAA and some of these things. And so I want you to get up at a minimum to 7.1.3, but go on up to 2, and then of course this fall when we come out with the ability to manage the clusters, that's an incentive to get up to the 7.2.2. So yeah.
All right. So you mentioned LPM, and I think it was you mentioned the PowerHA with it, but I guess there was a couple of questions on that just to make sure it's clear that all this stuff works together. Things are moving around with LPM. That as far as PowerHA is concerned, it's it's keeping track of where everything's at. Can you just? Right.
Yep.
So all that stuff plays together well. All right.
Yep.
Okay. There were several questions on the CASA system, Steve. If it's a separate LPAR, does it have to be highly available on a system somehow? Is it easy to recover it? That kind of stuff.
Yeah. So right now, on the first release, there's 1 copy of CASIS, and we're recommending that be at the remote location. On our roadmap, we will make a CASIS partition that's going to be able to be backed up to itself. In other words, we'll be able to provide. You can actually put a PowerHA node between those 2 just themselves if you want a backup of the CASIS partition. It can go on any partition. It could be on the actual. If you wanted to, it could be right on the servers that are going to be doing the restart, the actual DR target. Okay.
Okay.
So, and then that's, like I said, that's where the actual licenses go, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little different scheme than what people are used to. You're used to thinking about putting the licenses over on the serial number that you're actually going to, when you license PowerHA, you put it on the processor, right? You're going to load those licenses onto that box. In this case, those licenses are actually going up on the box that has CASIS, because CASIS is the thing that's doing the magic here.
Mm-hmm. All right. There was a question about GDR in a single data center, and I could see where somebody, even for testing this, if they can put GDR in a single data center with the nodes connected to the same storage, as far, even as part of a test thing, will it work that way? All right.
No, nope. We're looking at some of that stuff, but for right now, today, guys, this is a DR. You could be in the same data center. I mean, where you put the two servers doesn't matter. I'm suggesting that the majority case use is between two locations, but they could be in the same room connected to each other. But inherently today, you're talking about two storage subsystems replicating between each other, whether you're using, global mirror, metro mirror, SRDF sync mode. Oh, and by the way, I just now thought of something popped in my mind. You saw that on that roadmap in the fourth quarter, we'll also be supporting Hitachi. So, but yeah, so right now it's a replicated environment. You do have two systems. We don't do the shared storage construct at this point in time. We are looking at some different options, so stay tuned.
Okay. Steve, can you, this is a hard thing for us to deal with sometimes because actually it varies from customer to customer, but there were a couple questions on Oracle licenses. And, if you're doing this with what effect, if you're doing PowerHA or GDR or something and you have these Oracle licenses you're dealing with, and I even know Oracle changes from customer to customer depending on how demanding a customer is. But do you have any experience with, what usually the case is that they demand?
First of all, I can't speak for Oracle. You guys know that, right? I can't speak for any vendor. However, I've been studying some of the different rules. You can go out and it's a little bit arcane reading that, but and by the way, I actually crisped up the definition that I feel the way I've defined hot, warm, and cold is going to be sort of the industry standard definition. I made it very, very simple to understand. I see confusion in this entire area all the time. I had a case in Germany where the customers, there was an audit going on, and the customer wanted to know, well, wait a minute, I've got my backup system over here is completely, I only boot up to it, when I do DR, and and so, oh, wait a minute, hold on, no, it was a PowerHA cluster, and they had the one license over there, and so they were confused. They said, well, is that the audit people, I can't remember who was, KPMG or something like that, I don't remember, or maybe it was Deloitte, but anyway, they were saying, no, that's a hot backup, and so I said, no, it's not, that's a warm backup. And I defined it. I said a hot backup is where all the nodes in the cluster can have access to the production data. A warm backup says that only one node at a time can have access to the production data. And I don't even if you do an active-active setup, like say with where I've got, workload A on node A and workload B on node B, there's still B's relationship to its data is active-passive, even though the frames are active-active. You know what I'm saying? So I said warm backup defined is that only one node in the cluster at a time can access the data. And there was some confusion on that because they looked at it and they said, well, so that some old definition somewhere out of software group, if there's anything going on over there at all, it's a hot backup. I said, that's bunk. No way. It's if you can or cannot access the data is really what it comes down to. So active-active, all the nodes can access. Active-passive or warm, only one node at a time can actually actively work with the production data in any sense, read, write, anything. And then there's active-inactive, which is cold backup, and that's what GDR is. Now, and so I look at the, I was reading the Oracle licensing guide out there, and I noticed, for example, they said that data guard, that's active-active. Yep, I agree. That is active-active because you're running, you can actually on the target side access the production data. You can access it only in read mode, but nonetheless you can access it. And so then I get the impression, and again, I'm going to say me interpreting, I'm not going to speak for Oracle here, but I look at it and I say, I think that they recognize that a cold backup situation, that you don't need licenses over there. You're literally, nothing's going on in that box. The only time you're ever going to fire up your environment is when it's coming, the source side is completely gone away, right? I'm going to bring that down. I'm going to boot up at the target, right? So I can only exist in one place at a time. And so I think active, inactive, and again, that's me, my opinion. I would say that they would agree with me and say, no, you shouldn't have to license that box. That would be my interpretation. That's just my interpretation, and I'm not going to speak for Oracle, but to me it seems completely reasonable.
Yeah, and yet they have LPM licensing that doesn't seem reasonable as well.
I know that.
So you can never tell what's going to happen.
I know, that's puzzling. That's very, very puzzling. I don't understand why, because that is really, truly also, if you want to use the word backup, that's a cold backup. You're moving your entire, the thing is moving from A to B, period. You cannot coexist. You cannot, another way I phrase it, I think about it, and I say there's two physical copies and two logical copies with a active, or with a hot and a warm, right? But with a cold, there's only there's only one instance, right? Like if you're doing GDR, for example, yes, there's two physical copies. There's two physical copies of the virtual machines, but there's only one logical copy, right? So.
Right. So let's see, a couple of things. So Sean Bodley, who is a very good PowerHA expert, did say that there is you can jump from 6.1 to 7.2 in
okay,
one
good.
jump.
Thanks, Sean. Thank you. Yep, I thought you could.
So,
by the way, stay tuned, because at TechU, Sean and I are going to team up on a session and actually do a live demo of the GDR. So there's another good reason to come on over to New Orleans this fall.
There was a question about, and again, we get into another vendor stuff here, but GDR support for the EMC recovery point.
So recovery point, that's essentially the equivalent of flash copy in IBM DSAK lingo. So, I'm going to assume, I don't have my lead architect on this call, Ravi, but by definition, in order to do this rehearsal capability, you're gonna take advantage of that technology to create this. I call it a flash copy. I use that term because I'm so used to IBM storage lingo. But this technology on the EMC is essentially the same. It's a way of creating a point-in-time copy. So the answer is it's got to be supported. I would be surprised if it wasn't supported in order to do that DR rehearsal. I could probably ping Ravi right now and say, just FYI. But you know what? Whoever's asking the question, if you want to send me an email, we'll just make sure that that's not in question. But I would assume, until proven otherwise, I think it will end up being supported. It has to be. So send me an email.
Right.
We'll make sure we get that one clarified.
So there's a question in here about the end of service for 7.1.3. I know you put up a chart there, but do you have that off the top of your head, Steve? Yeah,
4.18.
4.18. Okay, next year.
Yep.
All right. There's some different questions on the GUI. I'm going to just read this one. With the new GUI, is it possible to have a read-only view without a login for displaying on a screen on a wall? I'm not sure about the display part of that. But
you have to log in. You have to.
You have to log in. You have to see the GUI. Can you manage? So there was a different question earlier about managing everything from that one login GUI.
Yeah. Yes. That's the brilliance of this whole thing. Now, let's be real clear here. Right now, today, it's monitoring only. Like I said. So the great advantage today is that you're able to look at the health of your clusters from one screen, right? So it's a monitoring function today. It's filtered the logs, it's skinnied them down, it's put the relevant logs to the event. It's done a whole lot of work for you, the administrator, and made it visually easy to consume. Stage 2, if I can use that term, is where we bring out the actual management capability. So be watching, fourth quarter time frame, that's what we're working on right now. And like I said, I'm offering to, if you know, business partner out there, you've got a customer that, hey, maybe you've got a situation where, hey, show us what PowerHA is like these days. You know, some of these folks haven't been around it since, you know, back in the HACMP days. It's kind of interesting. I come across that once in a while. They come in, hey, can you, what is HACMP? What's it like today, right? Right. So, hey, this is a neat demo. You know, you show them this, they're going to be, wow, holy cow, this thing has come a long way. But also, we're also interested in feedback. So,
all right. Well, we've hit the end of our time. Run a minute over. So I want to thank everybody for attending. Steve, I want to especially thank you for putting this together. Appreciate your time and sharing all this information and how cool this new stuff is with us. So thank you very much.
Let's do it again.
Yes, indeed. So everybody, I've got the next webinar for, I guess it will be in August. It won't be the last week because I'll be on vacation that week, so we were doing it a week early. And we're going to be talking about VIO servers, care and feeding of VIO servers in August, I think, if everything works out right. So with Jackie Lynch. So thanks for attending today. Have a great summer and see y'all next month.